Hello, B. Welcome to sonADA. Of course, you're one of our sonADA members, and so we're just kind of trying to highlight each other's situation and achievements. So I just wondered if um, we could start this interview with just kind of talking about your situation through lockdown. And so my first question is, um, it's when we started this kind of series of interviews, it was quite earlier in the lockdown, and now we kind of extended it a bit more, and it's kind of here to stay almost. But how was it earlier in the lockdown when it was kind of all quite new and very much severe? And um, how did you kind of live your uh, life in a creative sense, but also kind of other senses?
Yeah, so weirdly enough, at the beginning of lockdown, when things were worse, I want to say, I was doing much better. So initially, when lockdown hit, I got furloughed from my job,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of projects that I was working on got, well, not cancelled, but postponed. And so I found myself with a lot of free time and absolutely no responsibilities, which was really bizarre and something I'm completely not used to. It took me a while to get into the swing of it. Initially, I was just spending my days like playing computer games, and then eventually I started writing a lot of music.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I had a commission or because I had a deadline or because I had to do this
Yeah.
or do that, but just for fun, which is something having been a student for my entire life. I really wasn't used to doing. I don't think I'd written for fun since I was a teenager.
Okay.
So I started writing all kinds of music actually. And I had plans to work on an album, a couple of different albums I had on the go. And then I was going to collaborate with a friend of mine and we were going to release an album or something like that. And we had all these great plans. And then I got brought off furlough, which don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my job, but obviously it takes up some time. And then when we realized that lockdown is kind of like here to stay, then postponed projects got kind of tweaked and kind of got started up again. And then I had my PhD corrections to do, and then I had marking for the university to do. And I feel like I've just been chasing my tail ever since. And those projects that I was doing for fun back at the beginning of lockdown have been very much put on the back burner to take care of like more pressing things.
Yeah.
So yeah, early lockdown was quite fun and explorative, whereas now I'm kind of fried.
If you were to kind of put like a sort of chart to your creative cycle, if you like, how much time would you say, if you were to average out per day or per month, are you doing now compared to early lockdown?
Well, for early lockdown, I would wake up. Well, I'd wake up like 11 a.m. And then I'd pretty much instantly open my laptop and I'd be doing musical things like until I went to bed, which was kind of fun.
Okay.
Now I've got like a commission on the go, so I've been working on that a lot recently. But in terms of like the personal projects that started at the beginning of lockdown, I maybe do an hour a fortnight.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really taken a dive.
Okay. Wow. Amazing. So, so you started off lockdown with lots of activity, and then as you were doing kind of networking, what was your um, so you were supported in a way because you were furloughed. So that means for those of us who are listening and don't understand that, it's basically the government pays your wage, 80% of it, and the employer puts 20% in. That's and then basically, what kind of networking did you manage to do then that was more kind of open because people were looking for online contact sort of that way? Was there anything that came up through that?
Strangely, I didn't really do any networking. I didn't meet any new people. I didn't particularly reach out. I think I was quite happy just doing my own thing for
Yeah.
once. But then the person I was collaborating with he's a guitarist and a good friend of mine. We'd always had the intention to write an album together, so we are just kind of like, oh well, now's the chance, let's do it. Still in process, but we're getting there. So yeah, I really didn't, considering that I love doing collaborations and I love working with people. I don't consider myself to be a social butterfly or an extrovert, but I do really appreciate working with people. But yeah, I really didn't reach out to anyone at all and really just kind of worked by myself. And for the beginning of lockdown, that was fine because I quite like my own personal space. But I think now I've gotten a bit sick of my own personal space, if that makes sense, which kind of makes me not want to work on projects as much, because if I'm going to sit down at my laptop and write some music, well, it's very much headphones on, me and my laptop, and I'm kind of dedicating myself to even more alone time. I mean, it's not the same as like working on something heavy going, but it's still like I'm just a bit sick of alone time, really.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are reflecting on the contrast of choice versus obligation. So when you're choosing to step away from the crowd, it's a great feeling to have the opportunity to do that, but as you're obliged to be on your own, I guess even the most introverted person would be a bit sort of tried by that. So in the sort of talk to me about how your kind of projects are going now. So you mentioned the one with the guitarist for an EP, I guess. Or
yeah. Well, he's writing an EP just on his own, whereas we'd had intentions for a long time to write an album together. And me and him, we both listened to such a huge range of stuff, and then I think neither of us really write the kind of music that we listen to, which is kind of odd. I don't nowadays I don't listen to a heap of electroacoustic music, and I've been writing a lot of electronica, but I don't really listen to a lot of electronica. I think I just like to write my own stuff and find what sounds good, and I think he's very much the same. So we have the starts of ideas for like 5 or 6 different pieces, but there's really nothing major come to fruition yet. But we are having a meeting tomorrow to talk a bit more about it and hopefully push it on a bit more, because it has been on the back burner for a bit too long. And then my own personal albums, I was hoping to do more tuneful stuff, because throughout my academic career and my PhD, I've been doing a lot of quite conceptual electroacoustic sonic art stuff, and I was hoping to do something a bit more accessible to the average listener.
Yeah.
And so I thought about doing almost like an electronica instrumental album, and then having a go at writing some songs that had lyrics, but maybe releasing them as like 2 separate albums and seeing how I feel about that. And then beyond that, I have a commission on the go just now from Sound Festival. Unfortunately, the whole project has been postponed because the commission was to write a looping 10 to 15 minute sound installation to be played at the fountain outside Marshall College, although that fountain won't be switched on for, I'm not sure. Well, the fountain won't be running over the course of Sound Festival, unfortunately, but this commission is still happening and it'll just get performed whenever the fountain gets switched on, I guess. But I've been collaborating with a few people on that because my day job is running a community center, or not running it, but working for a community center to make stuff happen. And we have a bunch of groups that meet on Zoom more or less every evening. And on a Tuesday evening, we have a poetry group. And I'm not much of a poet. I'm not good with words. But I thought it might be good to get some of them and see if they're interested to write some poems about water or anything that the fountain brings to mind. And so they're all super keen, and everyone in the group has written a poem about water. And funnily enough, without meaning to, actually all of their poems go through the kind of water cycle, because some people wrote about rain, some people wrote about rivers, some people wrote about the sea, and evaporating and things like that, which is really cool and really works with the kind of cyclical looping element of a looping sound installation. So that's going on. there's a few, so there'll be spoken word bits in the piece, and there'll be different sung bits. And so I've been working with a girl who's based down in Edinburgh, and she's been singing all the parts for me. Like I kind of dodgily sing them into a microphone as best I can, send off the file to her. She then sings it properly, and then sends it back to me, and I put them in and mix and master. And
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's been fun to work on, and so that's taken a lot of my creative energy recently. So that's been really fun.
Okay, that's great. I wondered as well, when you talk about the installation, I mean, of course, I think this is the year of the water this year. So I wonder if there's any connection there, but maybe not. But what? Yeah, I think this is the year of the water. Not like a Chinese year. No, it's. So I was looking at something, and there was a choir competition or something, and it said that this was the year of the water. I don't know if that's common knowledge or whether it's one of those obscure things that people come up with, but no. But anyway, but it made me think about the community aspect that you mentioned, and the kind of the connection with the environment that we've in this time there's been a lot of talk about that. So has any of the kind of commission that you've been given, has any of that sort of rapport with the environment sort of fed into, you know, feelings about this particular work? You know, have you had any thoughts about the environment in this particular period where there's been less people around and we've been more aware of the planet? Yes.
The commission that Sound Festival gave me was very, very open. They just said, we'll pay you this much to write a 10 to 15 minute evening sound installation for the fountain. Are you interested? And of course I said yes. And then the very first thing I did, I came up with some ideas on my own, and I thought, you know, I would really love some spoken word sections in this. And this is where I approached the poetry group. But I didn't want to tell them, I didn't want to say, you know, write about this specifically, or it should be like this or like that. I wanted their own voices to shine through as much as possible. So we just had an open theme of water, and everyone kind of wrote a poem. Yeah. And so a lot of people wrote about like fairly intimate yet descriptive kind of water poems, but there were a couple of poems in there that had maybe not so much environmental, but like kind of political aspects to it. And so I think water is one of these things, with it being so, well, you can't say commonplace because it's not everywhere. It's quite a political thing, you know, access to water and human rights and the environment and all of this. There is so many directions you could take a piece to do with water. But I think what I really wanted to create with it is kind of, I wanted to make that place seem something special, because that place in Aberdeen is quite central, and it's quite, you know, it's quite picturesque. Okay, the big office block is pretty controversial, but I mean, it doesn't look horrendous. And Marshall College is a beautiful building, and that, like, all the nice flat grey paving around there makes it look very nice, and you know, the water feature is very pretty. And so I figured, you know what, some people probably have some really nice memories of this area. So I really liked when people came in with the kind of intimate descriptive poems, and there was almost like a second meaning about like relationships and things like that. And so rather than follow like the political aspect or the environmental issue, I felt that the intimate relationship with water and how intimate that place might be for some people in Aberdeen was probably a good line to go down for this.
Yeah, because there was also a very special fountain at the back. So the old tower block had a fountain, didn't it? It was kind of really, I think it was a bronze kind of group of figures above it. So there's always been a water feature around there, I guess. But so your current situation then, what's been the worst aspect of, you've mentioned kind of obviously lockdown. What's been the worst aspect for you as a kind of creative person, I guess, during this period?
It's definitely been the loneliness. I have my desk set up in front of the window, and I can see, like, I'm on the top floor of a full-story flat, but I can still see out and see all the people. And although I don't live on my own anymore, for a lot of lockdown, I was living on my own, and I was working from home alone. And because I didn't have a garden, I didn't have a car, there were lots of people that I couldn't see and couldn't hang out with and couldn't have over, and I couldn't go to their house because they didn't have a garden. And yeah, I felt very, very isolated. And I guess now that you can kind of, I mean, you can't really have people over, but you can go out and see people within reason in public places and in cafes and that. It just makes it very hard to make the decision to stay in and work by yourself on a piece when your friends are asking, do you want to go out and like go to this cafe? You know, it's difficult to sit at the same desk for, I don't know how many days it's been. It's been about 6 months, every day for 6 months, and work for hours every day by yourself. Because it's the same desk that I do my job at, and the same desk I compose at, and the same desk I draw at and craft at, and all the rest of it. So yeah, just a bit of cabin fever setting in.
Definitely. Sure. And going forward, because you've got your doctorate now, so I guess you've completed that journey. It's a great feeling to kind of close something. It's kind of control of your life. You finish something, and that creates a lot of opportunities, I guess, in terms of, you know, that's kind of one full stop, and then go like, okay, so I finished that, therefore I don't have to worry about that anymore. I can either do a bit more of that or kind of do something different. So I guess that there's a lot of kind of emotional stuff going around at the moment with this kind of whole situation where there's going to be some kind of explosion of I don't know, sort of people getting together, kind of gatherings. When this finally is over, you know, I guess there's going to be a real need for music and creative situations to bring people together. So, exactly, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. So I guess what I was thinking was, what are you hoping to, what's your kind of next idea for projects kind of looking forward? Where is your creative kind of thinking taking you towards?
Yeah, I've definitely taken quite a turn since finishing up my PhD. And I was kind of interested to see what kind of music I would write when I no longer had to do stuff for assignments or for deadlines or for commissions. And I think, like, I love the whole experimental, conceptual, electroacoustic sound art world. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. But it is quite limiting in a way, because I find that although I do play many concerts in a year, that it's more or less the same people that turn up to it time after time after time, which is fine, and that's great, and it's a really close-knit community.
Yeah.
But I just kind of feel that for the amount of effort and love that goes into everything I create, with it being only accessible to a relatively small number of people, it's a bit and so I think I've been exploring a bit more between, like, the area between like commercial popular music and really experimental sound art, and trying to find a space in between that could interest both parties. And I haven't found it at all. But I'm intending to try and explore the middle ground between stuff that's very, very, very accessible and stuff that is, to the average listener, quite inaccessible.
Yeah.
So I've been teaching myself a whole load of like commercial music production techniques, and just how like popular music is made and recorded and things like that. Just because I never really educated myself on the proper ins and outs of popular music creation, so to speak. So I'm trying to find an art form that has a bit more accessibility to it. I'm not shunning the wild experimental side, and I'm not shunning the fairly commercial popular music stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm wanting to explore the middle ground for sure.
So is how do you feel about sort of your current work, taking time away from that? Do you feel that artists should be paid more for their art? Do you feel that they're supported enough for their work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I you know what I see a lot of, and I used to be incredibly guilty of this, is that I would put all my music for free on like Spotify and Bandcamp because I thought people would be more interested in it if it were free.
Yeah.
But I've kind of since come to realize that if you're offering like your creative services for free and saying, you know, I put in countless hours into this piece and crafted it meticulously to just give it away, you're kind of devaluing yourself in a way.
Mm.
And I've taken down my music from like Spotify and like free platforms. I mean, I've got a few songs up in there on like Spotify and things like that. But I think a lot of artists, they need to value themselves a bit more and think, no, your art is actually worth something, and you're not a criminal by asking someone to pay like £1 for a piece of music. You need to value yourself a bit more. And certainly like taking on free, unpaid, voluntary work at the beginning of your career can be very beneficial to bolstering your CV. But there comes a point when ideally you'd be putting your foot down and saying, well, no, I'm not going to work for free or work for very little or whatever anymore. Sure. But I recognize it's not always easy because there's not always well-paying opportunities out there for everyone. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just got to take what you can get. And even if all you're getting is an extra project on your CV, I mean, yeah, ideally the world would value the arts a hell of a lot more, because I think people now are reading more than ever, they're consuming media more than ever, mm-hmm. and yet art seems to be devalued more than ever, which seems to be strange. And of course you'll have seen that a lot of venues are unable to operate, and there has been a bit of support for, you know, the arts in this country, but not as much support as you would see for like your businesses and cafes and bars and things like that. So, yeah, it's definitely it's a tricky situation. But as far as like what individual artists can do and how they value their work, it's sometimes you just got to take what you can get.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to do like a comparison between medical staff, training careers and pay, and musicians, because it takes a long time to get art out of somebody. You know, there's all the training, starting with an instrument, maybe when they're little, then they go and do, I don't know, music, and then learn about music production, and for a doctor or a nurse to be trained, it takes years as well. So you can't, if the government is in crisis, you know, you can't just make doctors or musicians appear like that. You can maybe do, I don't know, like a 1-year apprenticeship to become a carpenter. But if you want to open a theatre and with a music production, you know, it takes people who've been doing it for years. I'm just saying, I'd be interested because it's like low-paid jobs, musicians, nurses, but they're also actually jobs that take a long time to develop. So it's a difficult one. When there's a crisis, what gets cut is the low-paid jobs, and music, I think, is among them. So we are basically at the bottom of the ladder.
The thing is that nurses and artists don't make a lot of decisions in the world, whereas your businessmen and your high-powered politicians who make a lot of money, they do make the decisions.
Maybe we are in the wrong jobs. Anyway,
I sometimes think about that, because in a way it is quite selfish to pursue a career in music, because, you know, I'm just doing what I'm interested in, and sometimes I think, you know, should should I have done like climate science or like humanitarian work or something? Like, should I have done something to have more of an impact on the world? And there's nothing wrong with being a musician, but there's also like good that musicians can do. Bringing art to the people. People need art,
Sure.
for the sake of our well-being. And your art can have a message of support or of love or highlighting an injustice or something like that. So it's not pointless by any means.
I've exhausted all my questions. There was only one thing which was coming up. I guess is after this commission, you're exploring this sort of kind of joint between experimental art and kind of more accessible. Where's the kind of what avenue are you thinking of releasing that creativity into? Like a YouTube channel? What sort of, when you create something that you think would be, where will you be?
I usually, I've done a few tracks, I think 3 at the very beginning of lockdown. I just put them up on SoundCloud. But my SoundCloud's getting a bit full, so I might clear out my SoundCloud of some old stuff. I've also got them on Bandcamp and things like that.
Okay.
And I'll put them up on my website as well.
Okay.
But yeah, they probably will just be audio files rather than like audio visual or things like that.
Okay. So are you working on visual stuff as well?
Not really. No.
Okay, it's more kind of okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add to what we've talked about?
Artistically, no. But I would like to thank you for your time.
It's alright.
It's been a very pleasant conversation.
Yes, it has. And I'm going to put some notes on the interview video, so just kind of links, etc., to your site.